The rabbit.
The rabbit. The reason it's called the rabbit is because this guy, whose last name is Rabbit, frankly, he showed up here one day. He had really wanted an ES335. But when he saw the prices, he figured he couldn't afford one. So he shows up with this thing that was a Klira. K-L-I-R-A. They were made in Germany. They were an offshoot of Hofner.
Okay.
Their claim to fame from the beginning that anybody really knows about them is that there was a picture of Elvis holding one. Just like Hofner's, though, their construction, Hofner's, you know, without Paul McCartney, well.
Well, you've done extensive renovation to this guitar.
Yes.
Could you start from the top and maybe go through exactly what you had to do?
Well, the first thing that had to happen was the hump in the neck had to be removed, and that meant taking off the fingerboard because it was so severe. The problem was that they put the fingerboard on with some kind of a cement that would not react to heat, and you couldn't get the fingerboard off without destroying it. He decided he needed a rabbit in the headstock, and not just a rabbit. He wanted a rabbit in flight, cut out of pearl. And he had this gold medallion that had this folded look to it, and he liked that idea, and he wanted me to try to combine these things. I went online and I looked for pictures to find a rabbit in flight as a model. So there's like 6 or 8 pieces just to make the rabbit, and to make it all come together and then inlay the whole thing as one piece into the guitar was quite, it's an art form, it's a lot of work. He saw the light on the Les Paul and he said, "You can make the rabbit light up, can't you?" I said, "Yeah, I can do anything you want." I said, "But to do that, you're asking for some real intense stuff." Since I had the fingerboard off anyway, I had to cut an extra channel so that I could run a wire up.
That's really something.
So I had to do that before I did the veneer for the headstock too. And I got the wire all the way up there. I've got a little access panel in the back because these are blue diodes that are in there that light up the rabbit. I also had to black out everything but the rabbit so that the whole medallion doesn't light up, simply the rabbit lights. And then you have to be able to change the diodes or anything that might happen. And of course we put the Grover keys on since we're here. These are something Grover finally came out with, which is a standard size Grover Rotomatic with the Imperial buttons, which you used to not be able to do. Imperial keys are large, they don't fit standard headstocks, so they don't just pop in, they hit each other, and you know, so it made it kind of tough. He wanted these buttons. I put a rosewood veneer on the headstock because it's a hard, sturdy wood.
Sure. I
cut a new fingerboard, fretted, did the inlay. He wanted full block pearl, but he couldn't afford it because 50 thousandths thick pearl block this big, you know, he didn't want to spend the money on. So I came up with the idea of making them multiple pieces. So I got abalone and pearl so that I could actually use thinner pearl and fit the diamonds, and it looked pretty.
A very beautiful design.
It would have the same effect as the full block inlays and be real pearl. So that was good. He was happy with that. The neck was really fat. He wanted the neck shave, which I was all for, and I do a lot of that. I got all the way down to the truss rod like I normally do. Since it was a soft wood, I laid a piece of maple over it to strengthen it and to put rigidity back in. I took some tiger sycamore veneer. I veneered the back of the neck. I matched that round Gibson neck, although it's more like a 60s Les Paul. It's not the heavy, fat neck.
Your side binding here also has the nibs put in.
Yeah, I did the frets and did all the nibs. He wanted everything right.
I understand you did quite a bit of work to the body as well.
The back of the guitar had been desecrated. Look at the way this guitar was cut. It was stamped out. See the distance between the F-hole and the end here? If we transpose that over here, we're a ½ inch different almost. 3/8 to a ½ inch difference. Because something slipped in the machine or whatever. When it stamped it, it was out of position. Something, it was off just a little bit and it cut the face crooked. Well, that meant the neck joint went in crooked. And if you look at the guitar, the neck goes on crooked. Does that matter? Not a bit. But somebody wanted to straighten it out, and they tried. What they ended up doing was cutting this big hole back here with a clamp, and all of a sudden they destroyed this whole, they sunk this whole mess in back here. There was binding missing. I ended up filling it and patching it. Had to replace some of the binding, So I reshot this, and I did it with a triple burst. If you notice, it's not a triple burst guitar. It has a hint of dark, but basically it's a double burst. Doing the back to triple burst happened because of this wood, for some reason, up here, when I put the brown that was basically what was on here, this just turned black. It reacted with something in the wood the same way the glue did. I have no clue why. I darkened up the side so that it's halfway dark between this, and this. So when the guitar turns, you don't really notice the transition.
Looks like shadow lines.
See, this is the last remaining hole. I said, geez, you know, that's a great place for a strap button. Right in the hole.
Perfect.
Gone. I butterscotched the bindings with tinted lacquer.
Okay.
So I went over the whole guitar to bring this golden out with it, but I heavied it so that I got all the bindings.
Nice aged look, and
to give it that,
looks great.
Right, and it looks finished. No holes for humbuckers. It was solid faced. This is not like a 335 in the sense that it doesn't have a center block. This is an arch top. It's hollow. So there's two braces that come all the way through the front. In order to cut holes for the humbuckers, I had to cut into the bracing. I had to make companion braces so that I could have width, the new braces taking the load. So the braces are still mostly intact, but they're skeleton for the parts that go through. Now, due to the fact it was an arch top, I had to custom bevel and fit these surrounds. So these actually adjust and work like they're supposed to. When I put the bracing in, the guitar got a lot more bass response. Why? Some guy will sit here and tell you that there's some reason that's all some figured out mathematics. I don't know why. It's the same reason they do that in a violin. They put in a bass board. I was very happy because this had a very piano-y Rickenbacker-y sound, but was very thin. It didn't have a lot of bottom. And also making enough to be able to inset anchors for the tune-o-matic. And it's fixed, like it would be on a 335 that had a block. It's just that these go into the extra braces that I put in. He wanted an American Bigsby, even though it's exactly the same as the Korean Bigsby, the other one that says USA on it. And this one cost 3 times what the Korean-made licensed Bigsby. But
what about the controls?
This is the original panel. This was the only thing that I ended up keeping. This is the original chicken head switch. Now, these markings don't really line up anymore because I've got them so that it works. Basically, that's treble, both, rear, and this is coil cut on this pickup.
Okay.
Because they were as an extra position.
One volume and one tone?
Volume and tone. I replaced the jack. All the pots were open. They had no casings. Everything was, you could see the sweep, all the parts were all exposed.
Well, here's Dave's Rabbit guitar. Let's hear what this sounds like.
Coil bass pickup. This guitar was a complete piece of trash that this guy felt so bad about buying that he came in and wanted it fixed, demanded I do all this high-end work, gave me a deposit, and then when it was over decided he didn't want to pay me. So I ended up keeping it.